Oh, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, for this 15th session on the teachings of the Ratnagotra Vibhanga, or the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, as it's also called, and generally referred to as Buddha nature teachings, although of course we know it's much more than that. So, and then very warm welcome if you're catching up on YouTube sometime, has to be in the future from now. And so let's start by reminding ourselves of the importance of bodhicitta. We've seen that our awakening to our own truth, our own true nature, who we really are. I remember we had this wonderful example in the teachings of, it says, wisdom is like the father's seed, and meditation is the womb in which it grows, and then compassion is the nanny that looks after the child of bodhicitta. It's a wonderful example of wisdom and meditation and loving compassion all coming together so perfectly that then the truth of who we are and what it's all about can gradually sort of manifest like a child growing. Or and in these modern days, as I said, they're ancient already, but we had examples like a photograph developing. For me, that's magical when but people don't do that anymore. Everything's digital. But I'm sure some of you have seen it, or seen it on old films of where you've got the paper in the developing chemicals, and it's just white, and then slowly the image comes and it gets stronger and stronger and clearer until it's so. This is our quest for truth becoming a real journey, because it's really happening, nurtured by meditation, nurtured by wisdom, nurtured by the loving care from our hearts. So bodhicitta is absolutely central, vital foundation for all of this, and we always start with this very, very special moment that frames our attitude for learning these teachings. Not merely intellectual curiosity, but a real desperate, why not? Let's be desperate, a desperate longing for the truth. We've got to get to the truth before we croak. Otherwise, we have to go through a whole lot to get back to here. So we take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well. May they live long and be healthy, be well provided for. May they have good friends and find respect and live in places of peace and plenty. And most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for such good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering, and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawate shameta shatru am kure marajite karota keyori tejovati olayani Vishudane male malapanaye kukure kaka grase grasana Om mukhi paramukhi Mukhi shamedavane sawa graha bandhanane grihitva Sawa bhava pravadena vimukta marapasha Savitva buddha mudra Anugatita sava mare buddhar Butsarita parishuddhe bhiga shantu sava marakamane. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our head on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So we are studying this text from Asanga and Maitreya. You know it's a Shastra, and that it's the main source of our understanding of the third and the final phase of Lord Buddha's teaching. The text itself is in three main parts: the good beginning, the introduction, which is mainly the title and the homage, and the good middle, which is the body of the text, and the conclusion, which is the dedication. The main body of the text is in 7 major parts called the 7 Vajra abodes, which are grouped into 7 grouped into 3 and 4. 3, the first 3, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, are represented as the result that we want to achieve. So we're on our bodhisattva path, we're on a Buddhist path, we're alive, intelligent, caring human beings. What do we want to achieve with our lives? Well, we want to become Buddha, because that is the highest achievement any human can attain. And it has the most qualities, it is the best of the best, whichever way we look at it. Becoming Buddha is synonymous with becoming the very presence of Dharma. Buddha is the total wisdom of mind. We saw Buddha is wisdom, love, and power to help. So that wise, loving power is the Dharma, and the power is through teaching and guiding others to find the way to liberation. And we also want to become, same thing, not different, what is at the very heart of the Bodhisattva Sangha. They are awakened, they are speaking from within the truth, not about the truth. You'll find in the spiritual world huge difference. Lots and lots and lots and lots of people talking about the truth, talking about religion as though it's something else. But then there are those wonderful spiritual beings who speak from within the truth, who are never separate from it. We call those the realized Sangha, or the Mahabodhisattvas, and what they have is this wise, loving power. Not 100% perfect, but we want to become that power that's in them. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is what we want to become. The first 3 chapters are about that result. Then the next 4 are about the cause for that result. Chapter 4, Buddha nature, we have the potential to become it. But that potential will only be activated, become something real, up and running, working in our lives through the presence of enlightened beings. Enlightenment, the fact that Buddha came to this world, got enlightened, gave the teachings, set the example. That enlightenment needs to be, however it is, present in our life as a shining example, an inspiration, and then the enlightenment, which is chapter 5, has qualities. Those qualities inspire us. For instance, for me, in my life, 16th Karmapa embodied everything Buddha was. He didn't need to talk, to speak. Every action, every sound that came out of his mouth, every part of his presence, every moment was a blessing. Didn't need explaining. It's like when you got something vividly there, like the flowers I was holding up just before the talk started. They're there. You could talk about them, but they were just there, perfectly, wonderfully there. So the fact that somebody's enlightened and that their qualities are manifest. So chapter 6 is about the qualities. But then that they have the qualities is not all. They use everything they are to teach and guide others. So there is Buddha activity. So in our study of these two areas, the result, the cause, we're in the last 4 chapters, the cause for us becoming Buddha. And we see that the main cause is the fact that we have Buddha within. Buddha potential is the truth of ourselves. But that will only work when it's nurtured by the last 3 points. So in our analysis, or in the teachings we're receiving about this gotra, it's called, this potential, this presence within us, then we've seen that this 4th chapter on Buddha nature is in 3 parts. First, the 3 great statements. Everyone has it. Everyone has it the same. And this gives us a potential depending on how much or how little our Buddha nature is covered up by the stream of consciousness, by our karma, by our mind poisons, and so on. So the 3 great statements, number 1, and then 10 key points, 10 investigations that we need to know. That's 2. And the 3rd part of this 4th chapter is 9 examples to help us understand better. So we're in the 10 points. And we've seen that Buddha nature is not something we can directly experience now. And so we're taking it from all different angles through teachings from the Buddha to get a better idea of what is meant by those words. You'll hear the words around a lot, Buddha nature, Buddha nature. People talk about it. But now what I hope is that through exploring it the way we're doing, then we're getting a much clearer idea of what we're talking about. And we're dispelling quite a few confusions or mistakes. So we have 10 points. It's like taking something and turning it in 10 different ways to explore it. First, we looked at its essential characteristic. What is it really? This Buddha nature, this gotra we all have. And its essential quality is purity. That was the key point. All the impurity from karma, all the karma, but especially the heavy karma, and then the causes of karma, our mind poisons, the pride, the jealousy, the anger, and so on. gone. A dualistic thinking, which is behind all of that, gone. Dualistic perception, which is behind dualistic thinking, gone. Ignorance, which is the root cause, gone. So the essential characteristic is this purity, and because we need to use words when we say purity of mind, that kind of makes sense until you start thinking about it, and then it gets very, very complicated. But in everyday talk, purity is best, full stop, purity. But we talk about mind, purity of our mind, that's it. So then point 2, how do you get it? This purity that we're told we have and that is possible. Well, so we look at cause. Point 2 is the cause. What causes that purity to be discovered, manifest, active? We need to remove the impurity. That makes sense, doesn't it? Take away all those things. And how do we do that? We see that there are 4 main obstacles. Remember this hostility to Mahayana Dharma, sense of self, fear of facing, compassionate activity, and then lack of compassion. Those 4 things we need to really work on getting rid of them. That's the cause. Point 3 was, if you do that, then in terms of a fruition of your relative work, then what does this Buddha nature deliver, let's say? And we got those 4 quite amazing points, really, when you do look into them. Purity, identity, happiness, and permanence. We discover the purity, we discover it's our true identity, we discover a happiness that's eternal and forever, permanence. That's the fruition of the work. Once that's there, point 4 was, what's its influence or function? Both words work. So point 4 shows us that it is this everywhere. It's this in our mind, however we phrase it, it's this that gives us a feeling of the limitation of samsara, gives us a fed up, disgust with it, don't want any more. We see all the damage, the unnecessary damage and limitation. It gives us this turning away from the ugliness of samsara, and it gives us a longing for purity. It's kind of the spiritual drive that's in the universe comes from this. It's like if you drop something, can I catch it? Yes. That's because of gravity. I can't do it the other way. It's not going to rise up all by itself up there. But because of gravity, anything we drop will fall. Gravity is there. Buddha nature is what gives in people with an awakening potential. It gives this magnetism towards truth, goodness, peace. And it gives a kind of a feeling for all the fighting and the anger and the hostility and the desire and the lust and all the other things that cover it up. That's the function. And then there's the endowments, which were developed through 2 examples, the ocean and the lamp flame. We won't go back to those, otherwise it's the whole teaching again. And then we saw point 6, that there are 3 different levels of approach to this Buddha nature. Approached in a deluded way by what were called ordinary beings, and approached in a better way by bodhisattvas and approached perfectly by Buddhas. Because of those three relationships or approaches to Buddha nature, very different. Then point 7 showed us three phases of our own journey. An impure phase, a phase that's partially pure, partially impure, and a totally pure phase. That was point 7. And then point 8, that's where we finished last time, rounded off these 2 points about approach and phases, which showed three types of being: ordinary beings, great bodhisattvas, Buddhas, and ordinary beings have an impure approach, great bodhisattvas partially pure approach, Buddhas totally pure. Now we've done 3 and 3. That point is about all pervasiveness. Buddha nature is the general characteristic of all. It's a wider point than that as well. It's about often the same when Dharma teachers give teachings. They have to grab the first thing to hand to make an example. So I've got a watch. What have I got? And I've got an instruction guide, right? Piece of paper, right? So the general instructions, the general characteristics of this is it's paper, it's printed, it's whatever you can say about it. It's this. It's not a watch. It doesn't tick, can't tell you the time, gives you information. This is a watch. It can't give me this information. It's not paper. It's a bit printed, but it's got its own characteristics. This room I'm in must have more than a few thousand objects in it, each with their own characteristics. They're all quite different. Me, flesh, blood, thoughts. This is the general characteristic of all. So this piece of paper, as everything it is, plus Buddha nature. This watch is part of Buddha nature. Everything in our mind, which is what this watch is, this watch I'm showing you, is in your mind, you see. And that mind has Buddha nature. This watch moment in your mind, this piece of paper moment in your mind, has Buddha nature. We're not saying this piece of paper can get enlightened. We might wait a very long time. Or this watch can never get enlightened and become Buddha Timex. The 57th Buddha of our eon. It's never going to happen. We don't mean that when we say Buddha nature is the general character. General means it's in everything, which means there is nothing without it. Not one thing. So we're not talking about things in the ordinary mentality. This is why, in the earlier point, it says ordinary beings approach this in a confused and impure way, because we think of things as things. Things aren't things, they're experiences in our mind. Then you understand it. You see, then you understand. Everything mind. You see. This piece of paper, your mind. This watch, your mind. We're talking about the nature of every single moment of experience we have, whether it's such different experiences. But every experience coexists with this true nature of mind. And in Vajrayana teachings, in Mahamudra teachings, this becomes vital. This simultaneity, this coexistence of the pure truth with every moment of illusion. Very important for our practice. So anyway, this all-pervasiveness. So that's as far as we got. And now we go to the next point, which is a big one, which is the changelessness of Buddha nature in the three phases: ordinary beings, bodhisattvas, Buddhas, and how Buddha nature is changeless. But we're going to explore the changelessness, how can you say, from the inside of those three states, how it is. So that's a big part of today, just catching up. But we can't do this enough. We need these points to be clear in our mind so that we can go back to them and they'll help us. So if we stop there, and I want to use an example that's not in the text that may help us understand this big section that's coming up. We're looking at changelessness. Changelessness. All right? Buddha nature doesn't change. But we're going to see it differently in terms of for ordinary beings, for bodhisattvas, and for Buddhas. So the example I want to take is sunlight or sun energy, let's say. Right? So just now, if I look out the window, it's a cloudy day here today. Right? So from where we are, first phase, ordinary, so-called ordinary beings, beings who are one being somewhere because of their karma, a stream of consciousness that hasn't recognized Buddha nature yet, that we call ordinary beings. So those ordinary beings are like us on the surface of planet Earth. So we have the weather that comes and goes. So even in daytime, the sun can be behind the clouds. You can't really tell. There's it's completely by the way, but Vikings used crystals when they were out at sea on cloudy days. So even though you couldn't see where the sun was, these crystals, because they reflect the non-visible part of the spectrum in a special way, you can move the crystal round and you know where the sun is behind the clouds. They were really clever, the Vikings. But anyway, even on a cloudy day where you can't see the sun directly, it's kind of there behind the clouds. But then, because the earth turns, the whole sun's energy and light disappears, we're in the dark, and then it comes again. So in our kind of world, we get light half the day, but then the source of the light we can't see. It's just an example to show how it is on the surface of planet Earth. As you know, if you've taken an airplane flight, once you get above the clouds, you're in this amazing place of constant sunlight. You look down and there's weather. You're above the clouds, so it's raining heavily or doing whatever it's doing there on the ground, but you're above it. You're in a constant daylight if you're on that side of the planet. And then if you go even further, you take a rocket and you get out of the Earth's, atmosphere. Then you can be 24 hours a day in the sun. It's just an example, but then you're sort of out of one world, you're in constant presence of the sun. And then you can actually become the sun, or you could keep going in your rocket and dissolve in the sun. No more you, no more rocket, but woo, a lot of energy. You just burnt up and lit the cosmos a little bit for a while. So it's just an example. It's just an example to show how we're talking about the same thing, the sun's energy, but how, and it's always there. But even though it's always there, when you're on the turning earth with weather coming and going, it's not so obvious that it's always there. And then when you get out on your rocket into space, then it's always there, but you're not it yet. When you dissolve into the sun, well, that's it. It's not a perfect, no example is perfect. No example ever works for Buddha nature, none. But it helps. So it's to explain in general that we're looking at changelessness. Why? What's the point of all of the verses that will follow? Is because we're on a journey where things will change very much. We hear just now, we hear about Buddha nature, we read about it, we think about it. We're still in the dark, but through this wonderful combination of the womb of meditation and the application of wisdom within meditation and the opening of a loving, compassionate heart, our own journey will blossom. We'll get deeper and deeper experiences. We'll get more and more stability and so on. So for us, that will change a lot. We get glimpses, longer glimpses. And then there'll come the time when there's this flip where Buddha nature becomes our default state. We don't lose it evermore after that. There all the time. And then we still have a lot of cleaning up work to do before we are nothing but Buddha nature. So for us, our experience of Buddha mind is a very changing thing. Very changing thing. And even when we go through the 10 bodhisattva levels, it's just amazingly changing. I remember one quote from a very great teacher, Dugo Chensi Rinpoche, and he got what they call a pointing out instruction from his own guru when, I think sometime in his teens, his late teens. And he said, and as many teachers have said, when the mind opens to this Tathagata Gabra, this Godra, this truth of everything, it makes sense of everything. Milarepa says, understanding this one thing, I know everything. So Dugo Chensi said, when his teacher pointed out the nature of his mind, he said, in that moment, I understood everything. Then he said, but now I'm an old man. And I realized that when that happened, I was only just starting to know everything. So there are various examples of this, that we break through to something that's always been, but we still have work to do. So this is what we're going to look at over these coming verses. Now, we're on verse 51 and page 125 of the text. And it says, verse 51, this is a verse maybe to learn by heart. If you're learning some verses by heart as you go through this text, this one is very, very important. since the faults are but incidental, whereas the qualities are part of its very character, it is the changeless reality, the same after as it was before. This verse is too much. And as time goes by and your own journey deepens and develops, if you remember this verse, it is kind of it. It's what it's all about. And it brings out a very important point about what are called the two natures. The two natures. So in the first line, we get, since the faults are but incidental. This is one nature, transient, impermanent, interdependent, faults, something wrong. All the impurities that need to go, they are merely, but incidental. It's great when you're a Buddha and you can write these texts from such a high-flying point of view. The faults are merely incidental. They might last a few 100,000 lifetimes and take you to hell and to spirit realms and all over the place, but it's just passing. It will pass. It's what it's saying. There's the word merely, but, only. Samsara's only an illusion. But this is what we're saying. And this word incidental is, it's given translators quite a bit of problems, actually. So what you'll find in texts are words like adventitious is a popular one, accidental in a literary sense, transient, a very much more ordinary word. The word accidental in philosophy means something that affects something else, but doesn't affect its core nature. And that's what we're talking about here. Something that affects temporarily, passingly, but doesn't change what it's affecting. So all of samsara, all of the karma, all of the experiences of the six realms, their causes, the kleshas, the mind poisons, the causes of that dualistic thinking, dualistic split that causes that, the ignorance, all of these impurities that have to go are transient, impermanent, changing. They do not affect Buddha nature. They cannot affect Buddha nature. So we're talking about that's one nature, what is transient, adventitious, accidental in that philosophical sense. The other nature is the lasting, permanent nature. It says its qualities are part of its very character. So when we looked at number one of these 10 investigations, we saw what is its essential character, purity, and within that purity, then there are all the enlightened qualities. They are part of it. And they will always be part of it. They have always been part of it. They always will be. They are right now. That never changes. A changeless, pure nature with changing, incidental, accidental, adventitious impurities. So it's like, well, there's no example, but let's take something here, crystal, right? Nice crystal. Now, I'm not going to do it because I don't have what I need, but if I had really thick mud, I could cover this crystal with thick mud. And all of this sort of sparkly quality and what the camera doesn't really pick up, which is a shame. No, it doesn't pick it up. But when I see this from here, I see lots of rainbows inside it. Maybe you've seen enough crystals to imagine them in the fractures. Somehow, electronics doesn't do the rainbows. It's amazing. What I'm seeing and showing you, you're not seeing. Oh, well, that's the way cameras work. But anyway, this kind of glass, solid, wonderful thing, if it was totally covered with mud, we can wash away the mud. And it will be the same after as it was before. Even though covered with mud, it was invisible. You couldn't see the light, the rainbows, the colors. You couldn't even see what it was. What do you see when it's covered with mud? Mud. Huh? If you look at it, all you see is mud. Like our minds. Sometimes we sit down, we meditate, and we look at our mind. And what do we see? Our life, our karma. We see the causes of it, all of them, emotions, feelings, thoughts, the dualistic garbage going round, like, and so on and so on. All of those things, we see nothing but that. So it's saying all of our samsara has had this passing, non-affecting nature. This is what we're going to be exploring. But these two natures, when we say nature, we mean the actual feel, the isness. They are just so totally different. So totally different. This Buddha nature, or if we put it in more personal terms, this truth of our mind, this true nature of our mind, always is, never changes, never will do. And then the covering up of it, the hiding of it, is done by things which change all the time, don't even last a second. Causes and conditions, interdependent, making one moment of relative mind, thoughts, experience, five senses, memories, imagination, all this stuff doesn't even last a half second, comes and goes all the time. It's so different. And when we try in meditation to catch it, catch a thought, catch a feeling, it's like quicksilver. You can't. It goes away. It's so light, intangible. But then the true nature of mind, which is what those things are obscuring, is totally different. This is what we're going to be exploring in the impure phase, in the pure and impure phase, and at the level of Buddhahood. We're going to explore it in detail because it's a very, very important point. So now, verses 52 through to 65, 14 verses, are going to explore the changelessness of Buddha nature in the impure phase. And this takes the example of space and the elements. And this is why I sent you a couple of documents. One was to introduce the elements in general, and in particular in the Buddhist sense. And then I sent you a diagram, more relevant to this text, which shows the order of the elements and what they are taken as examples for. So I need to talk a little bit about the elements. Now, of course, many people these days, you come across elements, work with the elements, and they have names. 5 elements: earth, water, fire, wind, space. There are lots of ideas about these coming from different cultures, different systems, and we tend to think of them in terms of their names. Earth, we think of earth, and there's some quite nice writing by Chögyam Trungpa about the elements. He talks about the earth and rotting logs, and the smell of the earth, the feel of the earth, what it is, and so on. So we tend to think of earth as earth. That makes sense because it's called earth, element. And water, as rivers, as rain, as oceans, and so on. Fluidity. We tend to think of fire as fire, heat and flames, and we tend to think of wind as wind, and space as space. So, and in a way, even in this text, we are referring to those, what? What we're really referring to is what they are for us. What fire is for us is what we see, what we feel with our nerve endings, warmth. We see flames, we see a certain phenomena we call fire. Or when we talk about water, we're talking about rivers that we see, that we can swim in, that we can drink, that we experience with our 5 senses. And when we talk about changelessness, what do we really mean? We mean what for us as humans who think about things and who think about change and transformation and becoming and cause and effect and so on. We can't talk about absolute changelessness because we talk about what we talk about. It's talk. It's humans who've got brains and experience, and we go blah, blah, blah to each other, and it makes sense. What would changelessness mean without eyes to see and ears to hear and so on? What would it be? Yeah. So we can think about those things. It's helpful. Here we're coming down to a much simpler level, but when we talk about the elements, which is the example in these coming verses, they have those 5 names, and we'll look at them bit by bit. But what we're really talking about in Dharma is not earth, water, fire, wind out there as we experience them in life. We're talking about the 5 elements of everything all the time. Everything all the time. We go back to Buddha's time, and to the ideas that were along the Silk Road and other places, in ancient Greece, in India and other places. And it's the time when in Greece they were called atomists. There was a belief that everything is composed of the tiniest particles. And although things which are composed of the particles are all different, a tree is a tree and a dog's a dog and so on, but what those things are composed of, if you go down and down and down and down to the tiniest level, you come to a level where you can't get any smaller, and you've got basic particles that make up everything. So they called those atoms. We call them particles these days. With the 5 elements, we're looking at the 5 elements of each particle. Everything made up of particles, every particle has the 5 elements. This works out very well in physics. It has mass or presence. We call that the earth element. It is in relationship with other particles. Some particles cling together, they make compounds and so on. Others fly away from each other and so on. So that cohesiveness or lack of it, the magnetism, what we call gravity in physics, is the water element, is the attractive power. And then each particle has its innate energy, that is the fire element. Energy breaks down into 2. There is energy being released, which is tangible energy for us, and there's energy that's contained as a potential, like in petrol. You can set fire to it and it can drive a car, the explosion. So contained potential energy, or energy when it's manifest, being liberated, the fire element. And then there is movement. Every particle is in relative movement to other particles, kinesis. So we have those 4 characteristics of every tiniest particle. It moves, it's connected to other particles, it is its own presence or mass, and it has energy. That's what was meant at Buddha's time. That's what the elements mean in depth in Tibetan medicine and in the Buddha's teaching. It's mainly what we're looking at here, but also that they're more general manifestation. So we need to know that. I sent you something about the Indian system of the elements, which is what I just described. It's static. It means that just now, the structure of any particle, any atom, has those 5 elements present. The Chinese system is not static, it's dynamic. It goes through time, and it's about cycles, especially like the yearly cycle, the daily cycle, the cycle of a human life. There's a beginning, spring, coming into being cycle. There's a maturation cycle, and there's the starting to decay, and then the end of decay, which lays the potential for the new beginnings. There's a kind of dynamic play of the elements through time. That's more the Chinese system. So I sent you something about that. Here we're looking at the elements, and we're going to correspond the elements to our mind, to our life, and the different stages of coming into being. So in this system, we have a basis. So let me see if I can find the diagram. Yes, I sent you this diagram. Can you put up a hand if you can see it? Yeah? Okay. So you've got, I don't know how to point on this thing. I don't know if you see the, no, I've not got a moving cursor even. On the left-hand side, you've got the elements. You've got the 4 changing elements and space, which doesn't change. At the bottom, you've got wind. So in, how can you say, ancient thought, in India, in Buddhist India, everything starts with movement, wind. And the movement, the dynamic of movement is, so once things move, then that causes the water element, which means that some things come closer to each other, some particles come apart. You've got energy that gives rise to gravity, basically. And then that gravitational affiliations and combinations and things flying away from each other causes the material reality of the earth element, and the earth element gives rise to fire. Now it's easier to understand the other way round. Fire, the release of energy, can only happen because there's earth, because there's something there. It's the energy of something, the earth element. And how that works has to be because of the relationships holding everything together in the way they are from moment to moment, gravity or water. And that can only happen because of the basic energy or movement of wind. Whether you agree with this or not, understanding or not, doesn't matter. You're okay. You don't need to get your head around this or agree with it. All we're saying is, this is how people thought at the time this text was written. Basically, there's wind, that gives rise to water, that gives rise to the earth element, that gives rise to the fire element. And that is happening and changing all the time. All the time. This power within each particle means the particles are whizzing round, recombining, making reality as we experience it all the time. And there's an order to them. So these will be corresponded in our verses. As you can see, the wind is improper mental activity. That's, how can you say it, as close a legal definition as we can get to it for it. Improper mental activity. It's the activity of the mind which is improper because it's perpetuating our suffering and our confusion and our limitations. Because of improper mental activity, then we have the defilements, we get angry, we have lust, we have jealousy, we have pride, we have ignorance, we cultivate our stupidity, our laziness, and they cause karma. And this sets us, it's all of that happens how? In our relationships with each other. Why do we lust? Because we want somebody or something. It's a question of relationship. Why do we hate? Why are we jealous? It's about our relationship to other. And through that, we make karma with each other. That's the water element about the relationships. That karma and defilement gives rise to what we become in another life, which is the aggregates, the elements, and the entrances, the 5 skandhas, and our gateways of perception, and the 18 elements of consciousness. What we become in future lives because of our karma, because of our defilement, that's quite solid. It's the earth element. We are reborn as somebody with the karma we have to experience, the results of karma to experience. And then the aggregates, elements and entrances, what we are, doesn't last. And so we age, we get sick, and eventually we die. And that life is over. That's like the fire element that burns things up. So let's leave that and go to the verses. So remember, all of this is about changelessness. And now verse number 52. 52. Yes. Space pervades all, yet remains absolutely uncorrupted on account of its extreme subtlety. Likewise, this, present in all beings, remains absolutely taint-free. This is a general verse, verse 52. We're going to unpack it with the verses that follow, but it's saying that in those 5 elements, the first 4 are coming and going, increasing, decreasing, all the time. They're variable elements, and those first 4 interact with each other, trigger each other, very busy. All of that happens in space. But then what is space? It's easy when you've got a word. You understood it when I just said that, didn't you? It all happens in space, space. What is space? Can you see the space between you and the screen you're looking at? Yes or no? Can you put up a hand? Can you see the space between your eye and the screen that you're looking at? Nobody's putting up a hand. You can't see it? There's no space? I mean, let's put it another way, right? Space is the lack of obstruction. There's obstruction, right? I'm obstructing my eye, I can't see. But I'm not obstructed. I can see you on the screen. At night time, you can see these constellations, which are all these thousands, millions of light years away, because there's nothing between your eye and that star. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? And of course, if you've got a wall, then you can't see the side. So, honestly, can you see the space between your eye and the screen or not? What is space? Well, that's for you to find out. But with physics, it enables the photons and the waves to come, to travel. And the space itself is not affected. Even though we can't say what it is, because the very definition of space is nothing there. It's needed. Otherwise, what did we see in the elements? It starts with movement. How can there be movement without space? What is movement? It's relocation from one space to another, or through space. How could anything exist without space? Everything would be just one point where everything existed infinitely in one tiny point. Once it's not one point, then we can get manifestation. There can be fire here, water there. If the fire is here and the water's here and we bring them together, what happens? There needs to be space for fire to carry on being fire and water to carry on being a river. In our daily life, we experience space all the time in so many ways. So please, have fun. Go out and explore space through your senses. Work out what it is. When you hear a bird sing, and it sounds like it's over there, or is it in here? And what is space? When you hear the whole forest of birds singing, frogs croaking, all in their different directions, some feel close, some feel far. Explore space, where things happen and space is needed for things to happen, yet space itself remains unaffected. So this is what we're going to look at now. And this verse we just had is summary. Space pervades everything in the elements, yet remains totally uncorrupted on account of its extreme subtlety. What I was just talking about, sort of challenging you, stimulating you to explore, is so that you discover the extreme subtlety of space, what we mean by space. So likewise, this Buddha nature is present all the time, yet it is never tainted. So verse 54, page 127 says, just as space has never been consumed by fire, likewise this is never consumed by the fires of aging, sickness, and death. You can say, it would be, how can you say, more broad-minded to replace the word death there by rebirth. Death as sort of death and rebirth. So as sentient beings, we've been born, we've lived, we've got sick, we've aged, we've died, we've been reborn, we've got sick, we've aged, we've died, and so on and so on. So many times. But no matter how many thousands, millions of times, no matter if you're reborn in the most wretched of states or in the most wonderful of states, and that came to an end and you're reborn as something else, it can never damage or destroy the truth, the true nature, the changeless nature, the pure nature of your mind that we're studying in all these chapters. The most filthy, rotten evil and corruption that happens in your mind, the most hateful thoughts, the most corrupt, will never, can never damage this innate purity of mind. Fire is the example. We'll come back to fire in a later verse. But you know what fire does. Fire damages things. And it can totally destroy. It can burn down a whole house, and it's gone. So we have the fire element as very destructive. It's when the earth element, which was the being of something, releases its energy, and the thing is destroyed. So just as space has never been consumed by fire or damaged by fire, this Buddha nature was never damaged, was never used up by the fires of aging, sickness, and death. From there, for the moment, we leave the fire element, because the next verses are going to concentrate on the relationship between earth, water, and now in this text, this book goes back a while, I've put air. It will be better to replace air with wind, as I've explained in other teachings. Wind is really what it's about. Air can be static, and what we mean by this element is movement. It has to be dynamic. Air is a bit too loose. There needs to be something happening. Wind of change. So we're going to concentrate on those three elements. And so in verse 55, still on page 127, it says, earth is sustained by water, water by air, and by wind, and wind is sustained by space. But space itself is sustained by neither air, water, or wind. So sustained means, what it means is earth needs space to be what it is. It needs space. What do we mean by earth? The earth element, the being of things, the presence. If I look now at my desk, my screen, my camera, I look at the walls and the cupboard, I look at the window, I look out the window, I look at trees and the sky and plants. If there was no space, the tree couldn't be there, and the bush next to it, and the window here, and my eyes here. The presence, the being, the earth, that's what it means, that the actual being, presence of things requires space. And once these days we get an idea of how vast the galaxies and all of that, the universes are, is so immense, such a vast space. If there were no space, how could planet Mars be planet Mars, planet Venus be planet Venus, that tree be there and that building be there? It couldn't exist. So when it says earth is sustained by water, water by air, and air is sustained by space, it means that all of this play of the elements has to happen within space. It all comes and goes and they interact within space. But space doesn't depend on any of them. Space can just be space. It doesn't need earth. It doesn't need air, wind. It doesn't need water, element. Does that make sense? It wasn't 100% clear when I was reading the verse. I was talking a lot about earth. But here it gives a sequence. Earth is sustained by water, water by wind, and the wind needs the space. If there's no space, there's no movement. No movement, then there's no things in relation, and so on. So the point is, space doesn't need the elements. It's not part of the changing chaos of material life. That's the example. If we turn the page, page 128, verse 56, we get what is exemplified. In a similar way, the aggregates, elements, and entrances are based on action and the defilements. Action and the defilements are always based on an erroneous way of using the mind. Verse 57 over the page, this aberrant way of using the mind is based upon the purity of the mind. Yet mind's true nature is based upon none of the multitude of phenomena. So if you get the example, then what we're talking about is easy. And what are we talking about? What are we talking about? This is a big one. If you, what do they say? They say read between the lines, or you try and work out what's going on here. We had the example, the elements. Fairly easy if you understand the old thinking about the elements. You get it. But the first four elements, they're always making each other. They exist in space, which doesn't change, but they need space to be. But space doesn't need them. Space can be space. It doesn't need fire to be space. It doesn't need movement. It doesn't need energy. It doesn't need presence. Space remains space. So like this, all of the improper way of thinking, and then the mind poisons it makes, and the karma that makes, and then the reality we experience, all of that relative level of suffering mind happens within the changeless space of Buddha nature. But the changeless space of Buddha nature is nothing to do with all those things and doesn't need them. And when they go, it will be, as we saw in the first verse of this section, the same after as it was always, as it was before. So let's explore, well, not let's explore, this is my job. My job is to explain the terms. So it says the aggregates, entrances, and elements. And so in our group, many of you were at one of the previous courses when we spent some time with the Abhidharma text, the Kenjuk, and we explored the 5 aggregates: form, feelings, cognition, samskaras, and consciousness. And then when it says elements there, it means the 18 elements of consciousness, not these 5 elements that we've just been talking about, the 18 elements of consciousness. So we've got, for seeing, something to be seen, the power to see, and visual consciousness. 1, 2, 3 elements of seeing consciousness. There needs to be a visible thing, there needs to be power to see it, and these two need to connect up. Subject, object, interaction. 3 elements of seeing. Sounds, the power to hear, hearing consciousness happening. 3 elements of hearing. And then tastes, the power to taste in the tongue, the connection of the tasty thing with the tongue. Smells, there needs to be a smellable odor, the power to smell, and then smelling consciousness. And then our nerves and our sensations, there needs to be things which provoke, heat, cold, hunger, and so on, and our connection, the 5 senses, 3 each, and then mind. Within our mind, we have mind's object, mind experiencing it, and the connection. So you remember something, you fantasize something, we have an object, a subject, an interaction, 18 elements of consciousness. Right now. Tasting, seeing, hearing Ken's words. This is your Saturday morning reality, whatever we are. 10th, 12th of April, something. Karmic result. And then you have your 5 aggregates, which is another way of saying a human life. You have your form, your feelings, your cognitive processes, samskaras, consciousness. And then, so it says aggregates, 18 elements of consciousness, and then the doorways or gates of perception, which are very similar. It's like when we see, we have the power to see, the power to be seen in a visible thing, and the two connect up. So in the 18 elements of consciousness, with the gateways of perception, is to do with that. We're looking more at the ability to be seen of something, and the ability of the eye in this second to be aware of that thing. So I'm not going any further, because then we go back to all those Abhidharma teachings, which really only come to life when you meditate, you practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and you explore. You go round with your eyes, working out, what's happening here. What is a visible shape? That's a blue circle. So we look at it and we experience this power to see. And the fact that that's a visible thing. Turn off the light, it's not visible. Turn the light on, it's visible. And then, of all the things we can look at, we're looking at the blue circle. So the two need to connect. But then it's visibility. And our power to see as a human. And we know that insects see differently, dogs hear differently. You get these dog whistles that humans can't hear. And for dogs, they're loud. They call them. They're supersonic. So this ability to be experienced as a visible, this power we have just now in a human body to see such things, these are our gateways of perception, 12 of them. 5 senses, the 5 doorways into things we can perceive as humans, very different from what spirits perceive, and so on. So we're looking at your experiential life from moment to moment in this existence. We're summing it up as the aggregates, elements, entrances, and we're saying this is like the earth element. That's like the earth element. And then the actions that caused this reality, this body, this reincarnation, the actions in a past life that caused the karma, which were the karma, and then the reasons why we made those actions, our motivation, and in particular why we made the harmful actions that keep us in samsara, the defilements, they are, in this example, similar to the water element. Go over the page 130, and the improper way of using the mind is similar to the wind element. So that's dualistic thinking, dualistic perception, and the ignorance behind that. That's like the wind element. Whereas the true nature of our mind is like space, having no basis in any of those things and no abiding, no basis and no abiding. Just to explain the words, basis means what gives rise to it, what causes it. The true nature of mind is not caused by any of those improper way of thinking, karma and defilements, aggregates, elements, and entrances. It's not based in any of those. You understood that as a sentence. But if in the coming week you're thinking about this for hours and hours and hours and applying it to your meditation practice and what goes on in your mind and what all of this life has led you to your wonderful wisdom and conclusions that you've reached so far, aggregates, elements, and entrances, you will never see this nature of mind with your eyes. You'll never hear it. You'll never taste it or smell it. Perhaps more importantly, because we are really very much into the fifth of our senses, sensations, it won't be an experience in your body, like bliss and so on. So it has no basis in those other aspects of mind. And that's the point. So when you explore this, what are we doing to try and recognize this nature of mind? You won't experience it as a something, and so on. Well, we have to stop there. Let's dedicate. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained by the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen, and may its development know no setbacks. May it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may I quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Okay, your turn. And I don't know if you've got anything you'd like to contribute. Some feedback. I'd appreciate some feedback. I wonder how today's ideas, are they stimulating or boring or what? I wouldn't mind knowing how it's like on the consumer end.
Ken, I'm just wondering about the last thing that you were saying, but I'm finding it very, very useful, by the way. I probably misunderstood what you said here, but with verse 59, I kind of took that as Buddha nature's not to be, or wouldn't be experienced in terms of concepts or the senses. That was kind of my understanding of it. But am I on the right lines, or have I misunderstood you?
Yeah, that's right. That's we've got the philosophical statements of this text, right? Putting us in the right place, describing clearly Buddha nature, what it is, what it isn't, in terms of ideas. The implications of that for our practice of what you were just talking about and what I was talking about a bit, but it's both things. I mean, in terms of Buddhists from different schools debating with each other, discussing with each other to try and understand the Buddha's teaching, this is, it's the party line. It's the party line of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. It's making a clear statement. But then when we explore it, that's what it means. And it takes some thinking about.
I guess I'm wondering how you might recognize it then, if it doesn't manifest in terms of our experience of the world through our senses. I suppose that was the question that came up in my mind. It may not be a very good question, but
it's a perfect question. No, it's what it's all about. We will never experience it with this stream of consciousness. This is why the Buddha uses the example of a dream. It's only when you wake up, you know you were dreaming. And I know there are lucid dreamers, that makes this example more complicated, but we're not talking about lucid dreamers' dreams. We're talking about ordinary people's dreams. And so this life we have with its aggregates, entrances, and everything we are is not a suitable means for experiencing Buddha nature. We won't have so we'll go back through them. We've got the senses, the 5 senses, but we've got 6 consciousnesses. We've also got the power of the mind to imagine, to remember, and so on. Everything that we are, none of it has the power to experience Buddha nature. That's why it said in the phases section, ordinary beings approach it impurely. So it only is experienced, if we use the word experience, when everything we are that we call a stream of consciousness, compared here to the first 4 elements, changing all the time, triggered by causes and conditions, when that shuts up. That's why shamatha is an absolute necessity first, so that our mind stops being busy, stops being caught up in this and that, and it's quiet. Then within that quietness, we learn to suspend dualistic thinking, dualistic perception. This is the journey of Mahamudra meditation, but basically when the stream of consciousness shuts up, then Buddha nature is known, but not known from the outside, it's known from within itself, by itself. These are the words that are used. It's Ransung Rarik in Tibetan. It's always, it knows itself, of itself, by itself, and it can never be known by other. So that's quite good news in a way, because it means as we're going through our years, decades of meditation experience, any kind of like vision or physical sensations of, uplift or spaciousness or anything like that, they're not it. We can be pretty sure. They are exactly what they are. The experience of spaciousness, experience of bliss. It can be seeing wonders. That's not what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Ken.
Hi, Ken. As usual, I have a pedantic question. The last sentence in your explanation of verse 59 is space and Buddha nature are almost the only uncreated or uncompounded. I'm intrigued by the use of the word almost, which implies there's something else. And I'm wondering what that is.
Well, a lot of the time you can take the almost away. So what the texts say is that space and Buddha nature are the only two uncompounded things. And I'm trying to find the words to express what I've got in mind. I did try a little bit earlier on in this session. It's something we realize through Buddhism, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy. It's something modern physicists also. What are we talking about? We're talking all the time about, from our human point of view, lastingness, permanence. What do we mean by that? These are things that make sense to humans, but then when you see what a human is, and human mind, human senses and experience and so on, we make up these things like non-compounded experience. Now, I don't think the butterflies outside are talking to each other about non-compounded experience. It's a very human thing, and it kind of makes sense within the human sphere of experience and perception and intelligence and so on. So within this world that we're in, then we have the idea of compounded and non-compounded. So the almost is in there to tell us that there's a lot more to all of this than meets the eye, basically. So in terms of us humans, with our definition of compounded and compounded, fine. There's only space and Buddha nature, full stop.
Okay, thanks.
The waking up. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, thank you as always. I was wondering, I think maybe I have a misunderstanding about this. In the verses, it was saying, space does not depend on the elements to exist, but it made me wonder, does space exist if there isn't a consciousness that's sort of made of the elements to perceive it and recognize it? I guess it's kind of the if a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, is it there? And of course, the question I'm really wanting to know is, does Buddha nature exist without sort of a consciousness to recognize it and perceive it as such? So I'm thinking maybe I have a misunderstanding about the relationship between consciousness and Buddha nature.
Well, it's it's why we have these 10 chapters. These 10 chapters, even if we get really on top of their meaning, it's a start, can you say, to a wonderful discovery. So when we talk about the elements, as you rightly say, we're talking about something that we perceive, and including space, although, as I was teasing with you all earlier on, quite what is space? Can you see space? There's quite a few of the Mahasiddha's texts. They say, seeing Buddha nature is like seeing space. They say, think or meditate deeply on this. One of them says, what do you mean when you say, I see space? So, space as an element in the example. Yes, we need, of course, our mind and our 5 senses to experience space. For Buddha nature, we won't experience it with our relative mind, we call a stream of consciousness. When it's known, it is known of itself from within itself. Just now, we don't have that experience. The whole point of, just a few days ago, they finished their 6 years Mahamudra training, in Delhi with Taisitupa people. If they've been following the course well, they've been meditating every day. They've received more than 50 different sections of instruction. And if all of that worked well, so that's what is minimum 2 hours a day, 365 days a year, 700 days a year over a period of 600. So it's a considerable amount of of meditation practice, reflection, deep instructions from one of the world's best masters, and with luck and good karma from past lives, some of the 1,000 or so people who've been doing this course will get a pointing out. And it means they've practiced enough that in the presence of their guru, their consciousness stream will shut up. And they'll experience the lineage mind, the guru's mind, Vajradhara, where Buddha nature will know itself. And it will be wonderful. But until one's got that experience, it's impossible to try and convey it in terms of our own experience up to now. Never anything like it. It doesn't resemble one atom of anything we ever knew. But it's very clear, and it's quite comforting as well, because you find exactly the same thing in Sufi literature and other deeper parts of other faiths, is that God, and there they talk about God. God can never be known from the outside, only experienced. So when we come to it in this text, then we get what's called autocognizant primordial wisdom, or jhana. So I don't know if that answered your question. I don't feel very clear today, but
thank you. That was helpful. I guess so. So you're kind of saying that with the space example, it's just an example, and you do need the senses to perceive space. But in terms of knowing Buddha nature, it's different because we can't describe it and how to do it, really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
See, the difference is that space is just space. And what space is weird, once you start exploring what ordinary space is for us. As you said, it's something to do with our sensorial experience, the way we think, and we have the idea of space. But space isn't intelligent in itself. So space can't know itself. Whereas Buddha mind can know itself. Not only that, it's the only thing that can know itself. So we have to get to a point where all of those list of things called impurities, they're being exemplified here, our physicality, our doors of perception, our five aggregates, our improper way of thinking, of karma and everything, all of that is standing in the way. And that's why our practice needs to be such that it can switch all of that off for a moment, so that there is nothing but Buddha mind. That's why the example of waking up from a dream is really good. You're completely gone in a dream. It's so real. And then you wake up and, I'm not a donkey after all. Whatever you were dreaming of, it's all gone. It's all gone.
I'm not a donkey.
There you are in your memory foam mattress. Sorry, Myron, you were going to say?
Oh, I was just going to chime in with a few small points. And so we see the Buddha nature with the eye of wisdom. We don't see it with our flesh and blood eye, but we see it with the mind's eye, the eye of wisdom. Some people say the third eye, and they say the pineal gland, but that's still body. And all these neurophysicists that keep talking these days, and neuroscientists, the brain is body. The brain is not mind. They're interconnected. But that's just a fundamental mistake when we're dealing with the foundational trip of the different elements existing. And so one of the things that threw me a curveball was the Dalai Lama was talking about the space particle. So then that seems kind of funny to be, we negate the partless particle anyway, but to say the space has particles, that's, there must be some sort of tantric thing that I'm not familiar with. But so the mind's eye sees the Buddha's nature, and there's many names for the same thing. And so like Rigpa may be also a name for Buddha nature. So when you say almost, then there are other names and theories and that are all very similar, pointing to the same reality. But so then really not adding anything to it. But Buddha nature is, as you pointed out, is the basis of everything. And so then non-dual wisdom can be experienced in this lifetime. That's not really a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it can. But like Rigpa, all these words, they've all got a specific meaning. Like Rigpa, in one way, Rigpa's Tibetan. It's Tibetan for Vidya. Vidya in Sanskrit. And it's a simple word. It means intelligence, knowing. But then that general word is given specific meaning, spin, depending whether this Buddhist use it, this non-Buddhist tradition uses it, that non-Buddhist. What do they mean by knowing?
Oh yeah, exactly. Everybody has a different
So then in
understanding.
Buddhism, it's the way Buddha nature knows itself. And it's the only thing that knows it 100%. 100%. And Buddha mind knows Buddha mind. So Rigpa is the intelligence within Buddha mind that knows itself. But then there's many other Buddha qualities and so on. So that's why we have all these words, Dharma Dhatu, Dharmata, and this terminology that point out to this aspect, that aspect of one and the same thing. We can get it in this life. And see, the whole point is not about making it like space. It's like space, you can't make it. You can only clear stuff out of it. We need basically to shut up. I mean, that's the point. We shut up the stream of consciousness, and then Buddha mind is. So our practice for recognizing, we call it recognizing Buddha mind, it's actually for temporarily halting our stream of consciousness. It means that first we get a pointing out, a flash, because our stream of consciousness shuts up for a few seconds with a lot of help. The help of our guru's presence in meditation, our own devotion, and whatever, many things. And then we learn to shut up the stream of consciousness for more and more until there's this huge breakthrough into what's called the first yoga in Mahamudra, or first bodhisattva level in the bodhisattva teachings, where from then on it's Buddha nature all the time. But it's not about taking the kit we've got now and going and experiencing, Buddha nature. All of this has to shut up, and Buddha nature is. Very hard to describe. But we can do it, as you say, and that's the main thing. It can happen. But then what happens afterwards? Once we've stopped shutting up and the 100% pure Buddha nature stops, it's like coming down from a high. We remember it and we reproduce it. And it becomes an inspiration for all the time until we get the next shut up true Buddha nature experience. So we have feelings, memories of like vastness, non-duality. Fake, but very usefully fake. It's memories and reproduction until the next time you get back there, and then it's fresh as a daisy, and you realize how you've been faking it in your memory for a long time.
Well, in one of the sutras, it says only a Buddha knows what a Buddha knows.
Oh, exactly.
And so then, but do you think that the Buddha knew that other people were there and he was talking to them and he was teaching them? So he had some sort of stream of relative truth.
No.
No, he didn't have any stream of relative truth.
Well,
when he was saying,
now,
when he was talking to Ananda, he knew he was talking to Ananda. When he was
he talking to Ananda, or was Ananda hearing him speak?
Well, they say Ananda was hearing him speak,
Yes.
and everybody heard him in their own language. So he couldn't actually have been saying 20 different languages simultaneously.
Well, exactly.
So that's an interesting point. When they say, oh, everybody, if it was Pali or Sanskrit or whatever, maybe there was a Jewish guy speaking Hebrew there too.
Yeah.
Or Aramaic, and they all heard it simultaneously.
So when we come to the next subsection in this number 9 of the 10, we come to now we're in the impure phase. When we come to the pure yet impure phase, then we're talking about this topic, about those who have gone beyond karma and reincarnation and rebirth, nevertheless appear and they appear to be born, to age, to die, to teach. That's when we're looking into this particular aspect of how it is for them and how it is for the people who experience them. Yeah.
So the example might be Karmapa.
Yeah. I mean, there I've witnessed that directly. People hearing him in different languages, seeing him in different ways, in visionary ways, all at the same time. So not just in the books, definitely. I mean, it's mind blowing.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. It's 12:30, time for food and reflection, and wish you all a very good week, and come back in a week's time. Yeah, be well, be happy.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Drive
Very good.
Thank you, Ken.